I'm not just talking Gen 6 and later knockoff here. Obviously, the idea gets amplified when you are able to use the move as a bona fide offensive weapon in addition to the item removing effect, but I am making the case that the item removing effect itself is the issue. And I will point to the case of Gen 4 and 5 Clefable. Yeah, Magic Guard, it's immune to everything on Earth. Okay. What really matters is what it does when it's on the field. And yes, Clef has plenty of great things it can do that are not knockoff. However, in Gen 4 in particular, knockoff is mandatory on Clef. Unless you're running Calm Mind Clef, which, by the way, you are almost never doing because knockoff is so much better. And I would even add that there are certain variants of Calm Mind Clef that can slot in knockoff. Why? Why is knockoff so irreplaceable? Well, because in effect it is, and I realize this sounds extreme, but bear with me, it is kind of like an OHKO move. Or if you don't want to call it an OHKO move, call it status. Whatever. It is a move that immediately ruins certain Pokemon it touches. Think of it like a Thunder Wave that an offensive Pokemon cannot possibly take, or else it is just useless. It'll be good for death fodder, max. Maybe it'll get a decent hit off, but generally no. And now imagine that this theoretical Thunder Wave hits everything. The ways to absorb it are few and far between, very few and far between, and everything is affected by it to some extent. So, yeah, and when I say OHKO move, I mean that a lot of Pokemon that rely on sticking around to gradually wear the opponent down, suddenly, without their leftovers or heavy-duty boots or whatever, but we're talking about the earlier generation, so mostly leftovers, they're just ruined. Take the case of something like Spadef Heatran. Spadef Heatran has never been bothered generally by its lack of reliable recovery because Protect plus Leftovers means that it harasses everything forever. Sure, it's not breaking through teams immediately, but Heatran refuses to go down, and eventually you will. But with Knockoff, every time Heatran is in against Clefable, it must switch. It absolutely must. Speaking in fairly broad terms here, but as soon as Heatran gets touched by that knockoff, it is on a timer, it is useless, it will not do anything. You cannot have it perform any sort of task over the longer period like you're supposed to. And you think, oh, well, that's just for bulkier teams. Not at all. Offensive teams very, very famously struggle to outlast Clefable. And this is not just because they're losing their leftovers that lets them keep going in sand. No, I mean, do you want to lose your Life Orb, your Lumberry, your Choice Band, your whatever? No, you don't. And because of the way Trick works in Generation 4, you can't even switch, let's say, a popular one used to be Trick Iron Ball Metagross before the mechanics were discovered. And you would just say, oh, well, I'll lose the knockoff. I'll lose the Iron Ball with knockoff, but that's okay. I didn't really need the Iron Ball anyway, and I'm just going to Trick, so now something else loses its item. Right? But now, once you lose your item, you cannot use Trick anymore. So there goes that. There goes the other Trick users in the tier, Choice Latios and Rotom most commonly. So, generally, the safest way to withstand Knockoff is to have a Poison Heal Pokemon, with Toxic Orb, and activate that before Knockoff. It's a nice idea. Definitely works against some Pokemon. It's why one of the many reasons why Breloom is so valued in DPP, because it switches into Clefable's Knockoff, and once it's poisoned, it does not care that it no longer has its Toxic Orb. So it functionally has a Knockoff immunity. Other than that, you have Sticky Hold users. I like Gastrodon personally, but it is very, very niche. And then Muck? Gimmick. And then, in other generations, it doesn't really get much better. You have Poison Heal Gliscor, yes, sure, but even the Poison Heal Pokemon are not always going to be able to take Knockoff. I don't mean to turn this into a whole Clefable thing, but, to get back to that point in a second. But it's just the idea of Knockoff in general. I mean, even look to a later generation where, oh, well, I want to switch into Knockoff Weavile in Gen 6, let's say. Are you going to switch your Poison Heal Gliscor into that? No. Now, it also helps that Gen 6 has Mega Stones and Gen 7 has Mega Stones and Z Crystals. So the effect is kind of balanced out. So I'm not talking about any one specific generation in particular for the debilitating effect of Knockoff. I'm talking more the general idea of item removal and, if it goes too far, if we don't have enough counterplay to it, and if the counterplay to it we do have is sufficient, these are the questions we should be discussing. So to circle back to Clef really quickly, yes, Clef is immune to everything on Earth, but the reason I really doubt people would want Clef banned with the virulent hatred that they have for it, if it did not have Knockoff, if it was not threatening Okos effectively, just like. But if you don't have to just look at Clef, look at the absolutely insane matchups that something like Hariyama gets in advance, my favorite example, or Armaldo. This is a move that hits basically everything, and it is guaranteed to have some sort of effect. In advance, you don't even have anything to work against it. The closest you get is itemless paint split wheezing, which I tried once and it was actually kind of cool, but or just paint split wheezing, and if you lose lefties, you lose lefties. No, yeah, you want to run lefties wheezing most of the time, but if you have to take a knockoff, you love taking it with this paint split Pokemon. Someone used an itemless wheezing against me in SPL, and I thought that was kooky because I know I like Hariyama, but why not have the lefties just in case I don't bring it? Anyway. Maybe it wasn't itemless, maybe it was an item I didn't get to see, but I don't know what else you would run on Weezing. But that's not the point. The point is that leftovers-less Weezing, an abomination most of the time, to be a little harsh, it was brought because, oh god, Knockoff. And how else do you stop it? It's not just, be more offensive. Especially in newer generations where these offensive teams are the ones using Knockoff themselves. But regardless of the power, it's just the removal of the item makes the switching into Knockoff insanely difficult. And when if Clefable with Knockoff really wants to make sure Breloom doesn't want to come in, it's not exactly a stretch. You just throw Ice Beam on it, and suddenly Breloom has to really watch out. And Ice Beam is already a move that Clefable likes using because it completely flips the matchup against something like Gliscor. Gliscor itself, also a great Knockoff user. So yeah, obviously Knockoff is not always an OHKO. There are cool ways to incorporate countermeasures into your team, like Roost on Scarf Flygon, which was already a cool idea to use before Knockoff took off. But with against standard Knockoff Clefable, you will just be able to maybe not stall it out forever, but definitely take it on for quite a long time. But then this gets complicated by things like Encore and, again, Ice Beam. So, yeah, just the options of withstanding Knockoff are very little. And without it, then something like Clef, good as it is, would not be, thrown around as an Uber as it is by so many people. It would be a very good Pokemon for sure, but it would have so much more trouble making something actually happen because its other moves, Calm Mind Sweep, you're not threatening that against most decent teams. Or not immediately anyway. Over the course of a game, sure, but that's just like Calm Mind Jirachi or something. Or its other moves like Stealth Rock, great, Encore, great, Thunder Wave, great. None of this, not even Wish, whatever, has any has anything close to the impact that Knockoff has. It is just completely and utterly ruinous to pretty much everything. And that's why I kind of wonder about it. It is so powerful that even Gen 5 has seen it. And I have a replay if this one finishes, where so many of the time, so much of these games wind up being Clefable forcing Knockoff onto one Pokemon, which is then severely hindered by it. Oftentimes your own Clef, as seen in this DPP game. And then in that whole idea where, this Pokemon mustn't take this Thunder Wave. Absolutely not. Under no circumstances. No T-Wave, no whatever. Okay, that's totally normal. That's fair. Obviously, you don't want your Infernape or whatever taking a Thunder Wave. But what the issue is that Clefable threatens to make it not just a Clefable thing, so much is threatened by Knockoff. It's that you wind up either being seriously, seriously hindered, or you wind up, having to play very, very predictably because the risk reward is so skewed. You stay in against the knockoff user and it doesn't use knockoff, you don't gain very much. That's the thing. Let's say you have that split F Heatran we alluded to earlier. Oh, well, we'll just, stay on Clef here because it's not going to knock off. That's too obvious. So best case, you get up rocks, Lava Plume, roar it out. Wow, cool. Worst case, Heatran has basically been ruined. So everything being so immediately threatened by knockoff is so, and yeah, you can say, oh, well, substitute. These are, to me, that is functionally the same as saying, oh, well, Blaziken is checked by Aqua Jet. So that really misses the point of why these things are brought up. Now, could you say items are not a right? I don't know. I mean, maybe you could. I mean, who says that Pokemon need to have access to their items? But I get the idea, but I'm also not so sure it's healthy considering that items for so long are how we deal with a lot of the most dangerous elements in the game. Can you imagine if you say, oh, well, items aren't a right in Gen 3 OU where Sandstorm is everywhere, permanent Sandstorm? And, just imagine, what would happen if Knockoff was given to better Pokemon. So I think, Hariyama, Armaldo, whatever, Sableye. But what if Knockoff was given to something like, just to throw the most extreme example out there, T-Tar. Knockoff is not the most damaging thing T-Tar can do, but nothing switches into Knockoff T-Tar and retains its item, and that's not really a good thing considering how the Pokemon used to check T-Tar really rely on their item because the other options are just not there. It's not, just adapt, use, Rest Hawk Hitmontop, and that, which would actually be made so much worse. Rest Hawk Donphan, or Swampert or Flygon, so that you maintain recovery even in the face of knockoff. No, at that point you would start to question knockoff. Now, please don't misunderstand this as me saying, oh, well, knockoff is busted in Gen 3. Because I don't think it is, but it's just seeing the kind of absolutely insane things it can do makes me wonder about these things. Makes me wonder, when we get to cases like in Gen 5, there were these cases like ABR versus Solwind, where Gliscor is the knockoff user, and it's also the only Pokemon that can withstand a knockoff on the other team because everything else is so completely and irrevocably ruined by it. So with that, you get like these incredibly long stall wars. I think this happened 2 years in a row that they had these knockoff Gliscor wars where nothing else can get touched by the knockoff. Matter of fact, I might pull that one up one of them up, just to illustrate this point because it struck me just now. But yeah, the whole idea that this is a move with such wide reach and such immediate effect and such ruinous effect. With all of that in mind, that is why I am bringing it up. Not just, everyone should have a right to their items, everyone should, whatever. But, yes, so this was the first year. No, this is the second year. And again, 2 Gliscors. And, 2 Gliscors here. So this was 2019. So, yeah. Knockoff, and then ABR lets his Gastrodon get knocked off, which, not ruinous immediately because, yes, it has recover, but at the same time, look at these knockoff wars and look at that Ruinous actually got trapped. But yeah, the knockoff wars here, knockoff. So this is the first game, and then in the second game, it actually Solwind wins the first game and ABR wins the second one, but it winds up being so again knockoff wars here, second year in a row, and this one. Here they really don't want to, and then eventually ABR again lets Reuniclus lose it, but immediately back to Gliscor. So it's basically stalling out knockoff, so nothing else can get hurt by it. And eventually, what I covered this series on my channel when it came out 4 years ago. If you want to go look it up, but what is really notable is that what eventually winds up being game breaking for Solwind is that he lets something else take a knockoff. I think it was Skarmory. It was Skarmory or Excadrill or something. But whatever it was, we're just going to skip to the end because this game was like 400 turns long. I'm kidding. It was like 250. Wow, that is a lot of seeking. Okay, maybe it was more than 250. It was Almost 300. Yeah, someone says GG got impatient. Yeah, the Skarmory got its lefties knocked off. The Excadrill got its lefties knocked off, so I guess it was both. So, yeah. Now, I'm not, again, this is not a, oh, well, that's just how this game shakes out. Yes, of course. But please don't let it distract you from the greater point being made. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one.